Hello and welcome to day 5 of the Spring 2025 Web Technologies course. My name is Jim Kaufman and I'm with Rankin Technical College. I do want one miscellaneous topic to bring up today is as far as the books, a little mix up with the redemption codes, the redeem codes. And I know I sent one out, but that was just one specific one. So whoever was the first one to use that, so that they got the book, and then everybody who tried after that, they would get an error message. So I need to send out. I will send out later today all the redemption codes one to each individual, one for each book to every student in our class. So I'll send that out later today. So today we're going to go ahead and go over lecture 4. So I'm going to lecture over 4. I'm going to do a little demonstration, and I'm going to preview the chapter 4 assignments. I think I was kind of looking at them earlier here this morning. In the lab, I think I'm going to rewrite a few things in there because it's awful confusing. So I might break that out into a separate video, but we'll go through at least the homework assignment for chapter 4. And then I do have, I did create a study guide for chapter 3 that kind of helped with the written test. And I think we did this on the C# course. I guess I'm probably going to do that again here. So, and also I have a study guide. I still kind of need to add a little bit for the chapter 4 one. And that's to help with the written test. So, all right, let's get started with the presentation here. So chapter 4 is about how to use CSS to format the elements of a web page. So I know, we actually within our assignments, especially here, chapter 3 assignment, we're doing a little bit of CSS already. But this chapter 4 is really devoted here for learning CSS, right? Which is cascading style sheets. So we're going to describe the 3 ways to include CSS in a web page. Explain why it is usually best to use an external style sheet for formatting a page. Describe the use of CSS selectors. There's 3 different types. There's different kinds, I should say, because there's type, ID, and class. And we've kind of talked about that a little bit already, but we're going to review that a little more. We're going to describe the purpose of the normalized CSS style sheet and explain why, for the most part, it's no longer needed. It's still used. It's still used to some degree, but it's not needed as much as it once was. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Distinguish between absolute and relative units of measurement. Describe the 3 basic ways to specify color in CSS, and describe how RGBA, HSL, and HSLA colors let you expand upon that. Okay. Describe 3 properties for styling fonts: font family, font style, font weight, font size, and line height. Describe these properties for formatting text: text indent, text align, text declaration, and text shadow. Describe the use of float and clear properties for floating images. Describe these types of selectors: universal type, ID, class, descendant, child, sibling, pseudo class, and pseudo element. Describe one accessibility guideline for pseudo class selectors. Explain how user style sheets, import rules, and specificity are used in the cascade order for applying style rules. And describe the use of custom properties. So there's basically 3 ways to provide styles. You can use an external style sheet, right? And you use the link element to bring that in to your page. You can embed styles in the head section using the style tag. And the other one is to basically, it's called inline. And so use the style attribute to apply styles to a single element. And in this case, we're using, this is the style there. So them are the 3 different ways to do this, okay? And actually, this last one, this is not really, this isn't suggested anymore as far as best practices. And the editor will actually complain about doing this now, having this. I actually moved that, didn't I? I'm good at that. So the editor will actually complain about doing this, but there's a lot of code out there, even though it will still work in the browsers. There's a lot of code out there that still has embedded style, so it's worth knowing about it and understanding it. So the sequence in which provided styles are applied. So if you had all three, let's say you had on the same element in your same HTML element, you had it applied from an external standpoint, an embedded style, which is in the head section, and the inline style, which is in the HTML element itself, right? So this is the sequence. It's going to apply this one, and then this, and then this. So the inline style would overwrite what's in embedded. Embedded overwrites what's in the external style sheet. Okay? And we'll take a look at that here. And I think I will break away, and I'm not going to go through all these slides. I'll break away. We'll look at some things, and then we'll come back. So here's HTML that can be selected by element, type, ID, or class, and this is showing here basically. This is a H1 tag, and it's not showing the external, but it's just saying that based on the tag, you can actually apply CSS to this H1 tag, right? Or you can use a class. That's one way, and the other way is by ID. Okay. One thing to note is ID is unique, right? So you can't have multiple IDs of copyright in your code. You only can have one ID of copyright. Okay. And we'll talk about, in a lot of ways, an ID. There's some certain instances you may use it, but for the most part, classes are a better option. We'll discuss that a little bit more here. CSS rules by element, type ID, yeah, and it's just showing an example, element by ID. So basically, you're using the HTML element to apply your style to, and in this case, the main tag, the H1 tag, or the P tag. This is kind of a universal. This is all elements. It's setting the margin, okay, at the top here. Then you've got, this is how you can apply a style by the hash code, so that when you see this hash code or this pound, you know this is an ID, right? If you see a dot or a period, you know this is a class, okay? And then also I'm going to show you this normalize style sheet. And so what a normalized style sheet does, it makes minor adjustments to the browser default. So all browsers render HTML elements the same way. It's kind of a it can be used before you apply your styles, that you use this normalize, and so you kind of get it to a standard way, and then you apply your styles on top. Now, it's not used as much as it used to be, and the reason for that is because of the browser compatibility. Browsers used to be so much different. How they implemented things used to be so much different, between the different browsers. Now there's there've been a lot of collaboration, and there's a lot more effort into making things much more consistent. So the normalized CSS isn't used as much as it once was. Not saying that companies don't still use it for certain circumstances, but it's not as necessary as it once was. But I still want to show you that. You may run into it out there when you get a job. There, different companies are still using it, or some older code, right? So we're going to go through that, and then let's see. And then after that's colors here. So we're gonna go ahead and go into some code for a little bit, kind of cover these areas first, and then we'll come back and go through the color slides, and I'll show you colors as well. So in here, I've created a page. Actually, I created this back in the summer session for this course. And, it's just a basic page, and it's just kind of showing some examples as we go here. So here you basically, let's look at the HTML here. So basically, we got a header. So here's your header. And then it's welcome to chapter. So, we're applying some styles here, right? You're not seeing it here, but it's in the style sheet itself. Okay. So we've got a header, and, we got the black background and so forth. And then here down at the bottom, we got a little footer. Okay. So a header and a footer. And then between that, we've got the body tag. And then we've got a main tag here. Okay. So first I want to kind of go through, I guess. So here is this is embedded styles. And as you can see, the HTML validate extension is saying this is not allowed, right? This is basically inline style is a sign of unstructured CSS. Use class or ID with a separate style sheet. That's what they're suggesting. Okay, but in the real world, I guarantee there's a lot of code out there that still uses embedded styles. Okay, and it still will work as basically here. This is this line here, and this is red, right? So it is still working, but we'll go ahead and kind of refactor that to get rid of that. And then obviously in Visual Studio here, you can tell whenever this is red up here, you know that there's an error in here. And that's what this is kind of actually stating. You could probably make this bigger so that over here, you can't even see it because of the thing. But, there's a little red line over there telling you there's an error here as well. You can see this. But over here on the margin thing, there's usually tells you to. So, but, okay. Sorry about that. That didn't really help anything there. Okay. So first here, let me show you this. So here, I'm actually, this is the default size. Okay. And I want to show you, and basically this is pretty much the browser default, and I want to show you how to find that out. And so this is kind of a handy little thing to do here. Now, so we're over here in the browser over here on the right-hand side of the screen. So actually to bring up developer tools, I know there's three different ways. You can just do it by hand, more tools, developer tools, or you can do the Control-Shift-I. And for most people, you should still be able to use actually the F12 shortcut key. So if you just press on F12, it should bring up your developer tools. Okay. And I know a lot of this is confusing, and don't worry about all of the, this is something you'll kind of learn as we go through this course, and you'll become better at it. And, there's a lot of busy stuff happening in here. And, you kind of ignore it to a certain extent except for just certain things we really want to, look at. Okay. But for right now, we're going to, in this console, I'm going to cut and paste something and put it in here. And what this is going to do, and actually this is a JavaScript console. You can put equations in here. You can do all kinds of things. And we'll look at that when we start talking about JavaScript. We'll be using this as well, just as a way a quick way to run things. Okay. But this is console.log file, and this is going to actually get the font size. So this, once I hit enter here, it's going to return the font size. So 16 pixel, that's the default font size, okay, of this page. Now what if I change this? So if I change, here, let me get rid of this completely. So this is basically saying all the HTML, make this 16. So let's get rid of this for right now. An easy way to comment this out is highlight it, Control, and do a / and that'll comment that out. I'm going to save that. And then I want to run this again here. You have to put it on a new line though. So this is by default, this is what it is. Okay. This is what it's going to be. And this is actually another setting within, I'm not going to go through it, but within Chrome here, there's settings and you can go and make a change to actually change this. But most people never do that. And by default, it is 16 pixels. Okay. So for now, let's go ahead and just uncomment this out. So I'm going to hit the Control / again. And now we're back. I'm going to change this to an 8. I'm going to save this. And if I run this again now, you can see 8 pixels. So it's picking up the font size based on, by default, it's going to be 16 pixel. That's the default. But by us changing this, we're changing for this page, because this is the page we're working on, even though we're in developer tools. This is the developer tools associated with this specific page, right? So right now we've changed that back to 8, right? And by doing that, obviously if we go ahead and close this now, we can see it's a lot much smaller, right? So this isn't necessary here. I'm just kind of showing you this more as an example, but there's some times you want to, there might be some pages that you want to create and you want it to be a small, you have a bunch of stuff on there and you want it to be very concise. You might want to set something, that's smaller to start with. Okay. So let's go back to 16 here and we save it. It should reflect right away. And so we're back to that page now. Okay. The next thing here is here's our different selectors. A body tag. We're doing a font family here. We're doing font size and font family here. Okay. We got a header. We got a background color. This is a black background color. Color here, this is for text. Always remember that color is text. And we have padding, and we're using text align center to align it. And pretty much the same thing here. We're doing the same thing for the footer down here as well. So them are all type selectors. Them are all type selectors. They're all HTML types, right? Here, these are some different ones that I created just for example purposes. These are all, if they start with a period or dot, these are class, right? These are all class. It kind of shows you that right there too, right? And this is just showing you example, right? This is kind of a documentation thing. Just say whatever element you have assigned, and we're going to go look at the HTML. When we look at the HTML, we'll see which one has that class. But I have multiple ones of those created, right? These are all class ones. Now here, kind of want to point this one out. So here we're doing text styling bold, and then we got dot bold. And what this means is basically go find the class that's text styling, okay? Go find the class that's text styling, then go find the class within that. So this is going to be like the parent. So once you find the text styling, then go find the one that's dot bold, okay? And make the font weight and it's saying make the font weight bold, okay? So let me show you on that. So that one is on the right-hand side real quick. Where we got this? So right here, working with text. So this one's bold, right? So this one's bold. And if we go look at the HTML in the Visual Studio Code, if we come down here, you'll see, like that one had dot text styling, space, dot bold. So that's going to refer to this and this one. Okay. So even if we, let's just say, for example, we create another P tag here. Okay. And let's say, let me go ahead and do this. Let me drop that in this P tag. And then here, I'm going to call this bold test. I'm going to save this. And then, so over here on the right, you can see this. It's not bold, right? It's not bold because our style sheet had dot text styling space dot bold. So it refers only to that one, right? It's not going to refer to this one. Okay. So we'll go through these a little bit more here in a minute. I just wanted to point that one out. So them are our class ones. And then I guess these are advanced ones. I don't know if I have any IDs in here. A lot of times IDs are not, they actually suggest you really not to use the IDs because, I'm not saying you don't not to use them, but rarely, because the point is once you create one, it's only for that specific thing. If you do a dot, if you use the class ones, them are reusable. Any place that you have, right? Any place you have absolute or relative, or name color, right? Well, this is just a demonstration and these are specific. But if you just wanted to create one called dot bold, just like this almost, that would work. Now that one would work. Well, I have to have the dot first. So that would work for that one that that little bold test, right? Which I already deleted, sorry. But that would work now. So that's reusable, and any place in your HTML, you could always, reference that and it would work, right? Whereas if you've got an ID, it's only for that specific element. Okay, so that's that. So I think I did want to, so let's get back here where we've got this style color red. And then let's put this as embedded example. What do I have embedded example here? I'm wondering if I still have that here. I don't know if I do. I don't see it. Okay, that's okay though. So what we're going to do here, just to see how this kind of works. So let's say we've got a style here. And let's just do a class equals and then we have that. And so what we're going to do here is in here, so we have this embed. So what we're wanting to do is style color, okay? So I'm going to create another class. Oh. And then in here, I'm going to do color. And then let's just do this green thing here. Let's save that, right? And so that is that's what you call an external CSS file, right? That's this is an external. You're bringing it into your page. So this is basically considered an external. I sometimes look at it more as an internal CSS page file, but that's okay because I look at it as internal to your project. Whereas maybe because sometimes you can access styles from the internet as well. So, but for the most part, they basically use the word external to mean anything that's outside your HTML file itself. And so this style sheet, this CSS style sheet, is outside the HTML. So this is your external. So we created this class called embed. And then in here, let's go up here and then, oh, well, here's this. So I was looking at the wrong one. So embedded example there. So let's just skip that. I should have just left that, but that's okay. That. So, okay, so now we got three different ones. We've got one that's inline, that's in the HTML itself, within the HTML code. And then we have, I shouldn't say code, but within the HTML element, right? Down here, the inline, we have embed. And then I have it defined here. And then I also have it defined here. Okay. So if we save this, and we already noticed that this is the one that says use the style. So right here, this is red, right? So it's using this one here, right? But if I get rid of this, okay, let's get rid of this. Let me save that. Now it's going to be black, right? It's going to be black because that's what we defined up here. Actually, since that's a default one, let's make this a different color just to show this a little differently here. Let's see what I want to do here. And now it's purple, right? So the one that's has the most specificity would be the one that's inline. Then it's whatever's defined here. Now, if I get rid of that completely, right? If I get rid of that completely, save that, it should be green. But it didn't. So what did I do wrong there? What did I do wrong? I thought I made that right here. Ah, come on. It's supposed to work for me. Oh, I'm being dumb there. Yeah, I shouldn't say dumb, but yeah, of course that's got to be there for it to work, right? But so basically, it's going to use that one. If this doesn't exist, this is what I should have deleted, and then save it. If now it's going to be green. Sorry about that. So, okay. So basically, inline, it's going to use the inline style first. If it doesn't have an inline style, it's going to use what you've defined within your code here itself, right? If you don't have one here, then it's going to use what's in the external style sheet, right? So that's that. What else did I want to show here? Since we are here, use an external style sheet for coding a link. All right. So I think we all know how to link to a style sheet, right? Using this. The link element allows authors to link their documents. Yes, okay. So I wanted to kind of show you this a little bit, just because we kind of even talked about that a little bit yesterday. So 3 ways. Okay. Let me make this a little bigger here. So one thing here you can kind of do here. I actually added this. You don't have to have this. Okay. It'll still work, but the thing to remember is if you want to have a bracket, if you want to have something in brackets, like this is showing this code, right? An example, right? You have to make sure that you use these, right? ampersand less than and ampersand greater than, right? You can't put the bracket in here because it's not going to understand that. And it's also very it's a good idea also to use this code. And I'll show you because actually the browser does by default is going to change how this looks a little bit based on that. Let me just get rid of that real quick. Let's get rid of that and let's get rid of this. And let me save it. And when I save it over here, you'll see how this is going to change. It's going to look a little different. Oh, I had the wrong thing in focused. So I don't know if you've seen that, but it changed a little bit, right? Let me go back and put that back, and I'm going to save it again. You'll see this change. Okay, it kind of changes the style on that, and that's the browser actually does that. It knows that this is specified as code. Okay, and then another thing that you can kind of do here is when you're, if you ever want to, do something where you want code to be in your, you want to demonstrate, what code looks like, then you can always actually come in here and also do something like this, right? And then do your code here. Code's a HTML element, right? So then here you can do color, and then, whatever color you want to do. That's not a good one. But just trying to make a point that that's always a thing. Yeah, you can't tell that much on that. But so, that's something that, that's kind of a nice feature as well. What else I want to do here? Let me get rid of that. All right. So also want to go ahead and talk about this normalize. So let's, by default, okay, let's look at this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save what I do have there. Okay. I'm going to, I want to uncomment this. So I'm going to hit Control / to uncomment that. No, actually, I'm going to comment out both of these. I want to show you something here. So I'm going to save this. So this is basically by default, there's no styles applied here. There's no styles applied here. So this is what it looks like with no styles applied, right? It's not bringing in the style sheet, okay? Now there's also, like I said, there's this little normalize, and we're going to look at that. So there is like little spacing here. Like you can see the little spacing here. This is what Chrome does by default. And all browsers do a little bit of spacing, and that's why we were talking about that whole normalize thing. Okay, so let's go look about getting a normalized CSS file. So if you go to this site, and I'll send this to you as well. So you go to this site, and this is a normalized CSS, and it makes browsers render all elements more consistently. So basically, you're kind of doing a reset. You're kind of resetting things before you apply your style sheets. Okay, and here you just kind of download this, right? So this is all you actually need to do is you can take and just obviously you can point to this for the URL, or you can just take and save as, file, save as. Okay. And so you could save this if you want, right? So that's another option. Well, actually, the best way probably is to do this. Right click and say save as, and then just save it where you want to save it. And that's what I did myself. So, but that's how you can get that. And this is resetting stuff. It's called normalizing. Okay. So let me go back now. And so you see we've got the little spacing still. This is by default. So I have this within my styles. I have a styles folder over here. And within my styles folder, I have this normalize. I also have some others, one that I'm using right now is the styles.css. And then I've got this normalized, which is just the downloaded one, right? It might be a little older version, but it's the same thing for the most part. I doubt it's any much different, if it is at all. So what I'm going to do here, though, is I want to go ahead and uncomment this out. So I'm going to do control / and then if you see it over here on the right hand side, this is going to look a little different when I hit save. Control S to save. You can see how there's a little bit of spacing. It moved it over, so it kind of it's normalizing this page. So it's getting rid of everything's pushed up against here and that. Okay. So this is something some companies use. It has I've used it before years ago, but it's probably not as needed as it once was. Okay, it's probably not needed as it once was just because of browser compatibility. And then what you can do is you normalize it, so that'd be your first style sheet, and then after you do that, then you could go ahead and I'm gonna do control / then comment that, save that, and I'm applying my styles after I've normalized it. Okay. What's next here? What else was mentioned here in the? So we did a normalize. I think for the most part, the sequence are applied. Yep. So first they're applied to the external style sheet, then embed it, then inline. So if you have an inline style, that's gonna take precedence. So first the inline, then it's gonna look for embedded, which you embed right there in the head section of your HTML page. And then if not, then you look at the external style sheet that's linked to it, right? Okay, so I think we covered that. All right. So colors. So actually I want to kind of go through another little document here on colors. So in CSS, colors can be defined using various formats. Each has unique features and use cases. So you can have name colors, and that's kind of what I was doing when I had purple or green, red, right? That's a name color. There's also hexadecimal representations. There's RGB, which is red, green, blue, right? There's HSL and HSLA, okay? So name colors, this is an example. Red, light blue, right? This would be an example. The pros in doing this is easy to use, to remember, obviously, good for basic and quick styling. It has a limited selection, only about 140 colors. And it's not precise or customizable, where you maybe want to, I want it, to be a little bit different, not true red. I want it to be, so you're kind of limited, right? When to use for simple designs, when prototyping, when exact color match isn't critical, okay? Best practice, avoid using name colors in complex designs where precise or branding is required. And so when we're talking about branding, I guess, it's like a specific brand, like, a company has their brand and they have certain colors for their brand. And so, usually those brands aren't the basic colors. Usually they're a little bit different, right? So that was just the name colors. Then you have hex colors, okay? And a hex color is going to have hexadecimal, okay? And we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. Actually, W3 Schools, we're going to use that to. They have some functionality there that's beneficial here for this. So this is the hexadecimal representation of the red, and this is you can actually use F00. It's kind of this used to be the way you had to do it, and then they came up with this shortened, because I guess FOO is basically a shortened saying, and this is basically the same thing as red. It's just a more compact, shortened way to do that. Okay, so this is compact, widely supported, precise representation of colors. So yeah, you change a couple digits here. You change a couple digits here. It's gonna be a little bit of a different color, right? It all depends on what you're doing, and we're gonna take a look at that a little bit here in W3 schools, like I said. So the pros is it's compact, widely supported, precise representation of colors, can include transparency. Okay, there's eight digit hex. Cons not as human readable as other formats. Obviously, a little unless you have them memorized or no, or you're using a tool to create it. Right, that helps. No direct control over opacity. Opacity is basically no is transparency. Opacity is transparency. So you have no direct control over that. It's just kind of whatever it is, it is. When to use for, and when I say you don't have control over, opacity can be, there can be varying degrees of opacity to make something more transparent or less transparent. But basically, when you're using the hex, it's either going to be for the 8-digit hex, it's going to be transparent, but you can't change the level of transparency. Okay. Best practices: use the 6-digit hex for consistency. Prefer hex over name colors for better precision. Okay. Then there's RGB, which is red, green, blue. And then you designate it like this. 25500 is red. And here you've got 255, 255, 255 is white. Obviously, you might remember, you might memorize a couple of these, but you're not going to know too many, right? You're going to have to use some kind of a tool and so forth, or have some kind of document to reference to know what you're using, right? So the pros: it's precise color representation, easier to adjust the individual components. Cons: less intuitive for designers compared to HSL, which we're going to look at here in a minute. Does not include transparency by default. When to use: when working with colors defined in the RGB format. Okay. When dynamically adjusting colors with JavaScript. Okay. Best practices: use RGB if transparency is required. Okay. I don't know if that's true or not. Does it include transparent by default? Yeah, I'm not even sure that would be 100% accurate there, but that's okay. You're not going to be tested on that. HSL stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. Okay. It describes colors in terms of their hue: 0 to 360, saturation 0 to 100, and lightness 0 to 100. Okay. Now, all this stuff I know is, there's, somebody who's really going to get into this, it's going to take a long time to really learn to be able to do this. This is just kind of broad overview, just so you know what this kind of means a little bit, and that's all. It's really that's really the objective here. Just so you're exposed to a little bit, you've heard of it, right? So you got the hue, saturation, and lightness. The pros of using it's more. Well, here's what they look like. The first one would be the hue, which is like 0%, then saturation, right? Then lightness. Okay. The pros is more human readable than hex or RGB. Makes it easier to create color variations, lighter or darker shades. And that's your last one here. You can make it lighter or darker just by changing that 50% to 80%. It's going to make it, so you can take a look at that. We'll take a look at that a little bit here. May not be is intuitive for developers unfamiliar with the HSL model. Okay. When to use for creating dynamic themes or adjusting colors programmatically. When designing accessibility color palettes, lightening or darkening colors. Okay. Best practices: UHL for design required flexibility in theming, combined with tools like SAS or JavaScript for dynamic color adjustments. I know that probably doesn't make sense to you, but yeah, we'll talk about SAS a little bit when we do some Bootstrap templates. So you'll get a little more exposure there. Then there's also the HSLA, which is still the hue, saturation, and lightness, but you're also adding an alpha channel, and that alpha channel is for transparency. Okay, so here this is showing different levels of transparency. It's just another parameter here. Okay, it adds transparency, ideal for overlay effects and backgrounds. The cons of transparency might lead to unexpected blending effects. When to use. When you need transparency with the HSL, flexibility for layering UI elements for creating gradients. Best practice, ensure the transparency level works well across all backgrounds. So here's kind of a, we won't go through too much more of this. I think I overdid it already, but that's okay. When you use which format, it's kind of saying for simple designs, use the named ones, simple designs, quick prototypes, or when exact color precision not critical. Use hex for standard web design with precise colors, compatible with design tools or static branding colors. Yeah, so sometimes there's some design tools that you can use, right, to create code and stuff like that, and they may have, by clicking something, that's what they're more likely to be using something like hex than they would be using the HSL. Okay. RGB, when precise control over the red, green, blue channels is required, are for dynamic JavaScript-based animations. HSL, when designing accessible, adjustable color palettes or theming. And then use the HSLA when transparency is required along with HSL flexibility. Okay. So I know that's a lot there. And this is just a little exposure to show you that there's different kinds and different ways to do things. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and show you I think we'll look at this. So we have this color picker. And so here you can see, if you just select one by default, I think you come in here. If you come in here by default, I think it's this red. So by default, it's this red. And it's showing you what this red, what it's going to look like if you have black text on your red, if you have a shadow, if you have white text, or you have kind of a white shadow, what it's going to look like, right? And so it's showing you here's your hex number, here's your hex representation of that. Here's your RGB, and here's your HSL, right? So if you come in here and you want to play around with this and you find some different colors you like, all right, and you want to then you can kind of actually use this to grab the different RGBs or HSL, right? Once you get it locked in what you like, all right? So obviously you can change these just by, you should be able to change this. Just go like that and then hit OK. And yeah, so that's going to say, well, it's showing you that that's this one. So this is what the RGB or HSL is going to be the same representation as of that, right? But obviously these you can change a little bit, right? These you can change a little bit. These you're pretty much whatever that is what that is. These numbers you could change that to a little bit of different number, and it's going to change this a little bit, right? Right. Same with the HSL. Like we looked at the HSL, you have another parameter here, right? You could have another parameter here for transparency, right? So that's that. And then here's kind of showing you, yeah. So, yep, hue. So this basically, here's your hue, here's your saturation, here's your lightness, right? So if you want, if you're looking for a certain hue, you can come in here and do it this way, right? And then you can just cut and paste these and use these in your code, right? So something you can play with, okay? I need to save this URL for later. So I can send you that. All right, let's see what's next here. It says use hexadecimals, values for colors. Okay, so 3 ways to specify. We got silver. This is a name color. That's what we looked at. RGB, red, green, blue. All right. And you can do it 2 different ways here. And then here's with RGB that uses hexadecimal numbers with it. Okay. I think that's a little strange, but that's okay. So here's an example where you're just putting in a hexadecimal number for your color, right? And like I said, this would be the shorthand, right? It's a shorthand code of this one. So some have shorthand codes, okay? Accessibility guidelines for colors. Remember the visually impaired. Dark text on a light background is easier to read, and black type on a white background is easiest to read. Black type on a white background. Yeah. So basically, yeah, when you do come in here, that's a very good point. Because when you're coming in here and if you do some really dark stuff, see, you got a problem there, right? Especially if you're wanting black text. So it's obviously the lighter the colors, the best you are with dark, right? If you're going to use white, which is usually in most cases, I would think not suggested for best practices. I'm not saying you can't use it here and there, but white's not always the best. But not to say that there's not circumstances you would use it, and not that people don't use it, but just kind of showing you it's going to look different. So this kind of helps you too. Selecting a color, you can come in here, play around, find what works. Some things work really well with all colors, right? Some work well with all colors. Well, more than others. So the black actually, the red looks, obviously really good with white. And then, it's readable with the black, right? It's readable. So, all right. So we kind of already looked at this. Everything we kind of went through here already. And just remember, opacity is the level of transparency, right? Opacity is the level of transparency. Here's just some examples. So actually, some important thing I probably should have actually mentioned here. It's important just you probably should use, you might be asked here to use different ones just for on the assignments. You might be asked to use different ones, but it's important really just you really want to be consistent. You don't want to be, I'm going to use hex here, and I'm just talking about a real world example. You're working on a web project. You really want to kind of stick with the same same format. So if you're going to use one format, you should try to stick with it if you can. I would, it's probably not a best idea to mix different formats, right? It's just showing some examples, 5 generic font families. Okay. So font families. So there's different font families that can be used, right? So let's kind of go through that a little bit as well here. Where's my font families? All right. So, yeah, font. So how font families in CSS here. So let's see. believe we do have an example of that in our code here. Real quick, let me just look at that real quick. What do we do in here? Font family. So here's our font family. Helvetica, Arial, Sans Serif. So the way this works is basically it's going to, because this HTML document doesn't know what browser it's going to be used in, right? So it's going to, and some people have different, so might be used in, different browsers. And so it's basically, this is the way this works is first it's going to use this first one. If this isn't found, if this isn't available, right? And these are actually embedded within the browser. I mean, for being used, right? So if it can't find that one, it's going to use Arial. If it can't find that, it's going to find any sans serif. All right. That's just how that works. Let's just look at that. So right here, font family, font one. So font one is the first choice, right? If that's not available, the fallback is font one. If is font two, if font one's not available, and then there's the generic family, generic font category. And so then in that case, it's going to ensure readability of none, fonts are available. It's basically going to find anyone within that family that's the browser supports, right? So the first one is going to be used. If that one's not available, it's the second one. If not, it's going to be the default one. It's going to say just grab me anything, right? Okay, and just here's an example, font family, just kind of what we were looking at, right? In this case, it's starting with Arial, then, Helvetica, and then, the sans serif. So Arial's the primary font, yep, the fallback, and then the generic one. Okay, how multiple font families work in one line. Okay. Obviously tries to load the first one. If the first one is unavailable, we kind of already went through that. Suitable font and found. Okay. Understanding generic families. Yeah, so here's the 5 generic families. So that third one in the list, that last one in the list, you want it to be you want it probably to be one of these, right? You want it to be one of these being. You can change them as you want, right? You just have to realize that certain fonts are a little more readable than others, right? Some people use some bizarre little fonts, and it's fun, right? But it depends on your purposes, right? And a lot of from a business standpoint, business application or something you want accessibility in that, it's probably best to stick with the basic ones, right? More readable and so forth, right? Best practices, specify multiple fonts, right? Enclose the font names in quotes. Generic fallback, always end the list with a generic font family for maximum compatibility. Web-safe fonts, use widely available fonts, right? Or include web fonts through services like Google Fonts. Yeah, Google has some fonts as well that could also be used. Performance considerations. Loading custom fonts from the web, like Google Fonts, could slow down your site. Use them sparingly and preload if necessary. Okay. I don't know why I kept on repeating there on that. I think font availability. Sure, the font you specify either web safe or include it via web font service. Font rendering. Different browsers and operating system render fonts differently. So test across multiple devices. Performance. Optimize web font usage by loading only the required weights and styles. Use the font display properties like swap to avoid delays. Okay. Now there is font variant. There is a shortcut, kind of a shortcut, and now we'll go through this a little I'll show you this now, but I'll show you this a little bit later because in the homework assignment, it's telling you there's kind of a shortcut to do for your font. And this doesn't, you know, kind of right here, if you look down here at the bottom, so it's doing a select, you know, a selector for a paragraph, and it's saying make it a italic, bold, 16 point, Arial, sans serif. So this is kind of a shortcut type thing, and we'll take a look at that again. So one of the in the homework assignments asks you to do that, so it's kind of a shortcut type thing. Okay, you can add multiple things, not just the font family, right? Okay. All right. That's that. So, maybe how to specify font family. So now we know how that works. We know it's going to select the first one, then the second one. If not, it's going to be the default, right? It's going to find anything that matches anything at the end. Because there could be multiple, like monospace here, there could be multiple monospace type font families. And it will just find the first one that matches on that, and then it will use that one. Font size. This is how you change the font size, 12 point or 150 or 1.5 EM. So we're going to look into that a little bit here as well. There's different ways to represent size, right? Here we got points, percentage, or EMs. Okay, we're going to take a look at that here in a minute. Let's see. Go through a few more of these. A font family role in the body element that is inherited by all descendants. Yeah. So just basically saying, you know, once you define this at the body level, all your other tags are going to use this. Okay. And in this case, a font family rule in a descendant that overrides the inherited font family. So obviously, once you create it like that, the whole everything in the body of the HTML will use that font family. If you go ahead and change one specific, so this would be when you do P, that's every paragraph, right? The only way to limit that, you have to specify which P. But this is every P, so every P, which is paragraph, every paragraph in that HTML is going to use a different font family, right? Properties for styling fonts, you have font style, font weight, font variant, and line height. How to specify the properties for styling fonts. With font styles and variants. So font style, you have italic, normal, right? Small caps. I don't even know if I've ever really used it like that, but but italic, normal, right? Font weights, so you can use a number. Bold is the same as 700. Normal is actually 400. And then lighter relative to the parent element. Relative to the parent element. Line heights, so it's just showing you here you're using points, or here's percent or EM. And we're going to go through our different measure, our different ways to represent fonts, or different types of sizes. Okay. Here in a minute. I just want to get through a few more of these. Properties for indenting, aligning, and decorating text. You have text indent, text align, vertical align, and text decoration. So here's just a footer where you're having the font size being 80% and the text align being right. Here's a text shadow. You can do a text shadow. And this is something you want to kind of play with a little bit. And I'll show you the example. There's an example on the page we were just looking at earlier on the HTML page that we got in the Visual Studio Code. So we can take a look at that. So you've got horizontal offset, vertical offset, a blur radius, and a shadow color. Obviously, you don't have to use them all, right? Sometimes you only have to, you're doing the first two here in this case. So here's a shadow. Another way to do a shadow, okay, just showing you a different shadow. Okay, let's just actually stop there. So it's 10:07. Why don't we come back? Come back about 10:20. Come back at 10:20, and we'll go through. I want to go through the different measurements. You know, the different font sizes and stuff, and we'll go through that, and we'll go from there. So there are different units used for defining dimensions, such as font sizes, spacing, and layout. These are the popular ones. Is pixel, point, and EMs. Okay. There's certain circumstances where and when they should be used. Now, I know some of the assignments are going to ask you to do something. You just go ahead and do it. But in the real world, you know, when you're creating a complete website or something, you pretty much want to follow the standards that are available or best practices. Okay, on using certain things, you can use things. Don't mean it might look great and everything else, but just kind of best practices on some of this. All right. So pixels defined as a fixed unit that represents a specific number of pixels on the screen. It's absolute. It does not scale. So you can't change. Once you say something's 16 pixels, it's not going to scale. It's not going to get smaller or bigger, right? It is absolute and does not scale with other factors like the user's font settings or screen resolution. Okay. So use cases when you want to use pixel, PX, is when precision is essential for like borders, small icons, or fixed layouts. Okay. And for consistent design that don't rely on users' preference for scaling. Best practices: avoid using pixels for text sizes in responsive design, as it can hinder accessibility, and use sparingly for layout elements when flexibility is not required. Points. Point is a unit commonly used in print media, where 1 point equals 1/72 of an inch. It's not ideal for screen use since the way it renders can vary across devices. Rarely used in modern web design. People use. You see some old code. You'll see a lot of it, but in modern web design, it's not really used as much. Because of the limitations there. Best suited for print-specific styling when using CSS for print media. So haven't spoke about that yet. You can actually create a separate style sheet just for printing purposes. So like, let's say you've got a complex site and you have a lot of different things going on there. Well, when somebody wants to print that, people probably don't do that too much anymore. But, there was a point in time that especially articles and stuff, people would like to print them. So sometimes even you go to a website, look at an article, sometimes there's a whole bunch there's advertisements on that page. There's all this other stuff going on around that article. And so what you can do is you create a special CSS just for print. So when you print it, it ignores all that other stuff and just prints the article, right? So you can control that. Let's see. Best practice: avoid using point for web layouts or on-screen text. That is not reliably consistent across devices and resolutions. So EM. is a relative unit based on the font size of the element's parent. So let's say you've got a span tag that's its parent element is a paragraph tag. It's actually going to be relative to the parent, right? So basically, we're talking about embedded type. Embedded type, or I don't want to say embedded, but child elements of something else, right? A child element is just because it's encased or by and it belongs to another tag because it's within it. So that's the parent tag, right? So a relative unit based on the font size of its element's parent. For example, 1 EM is the current font size. 2 EM is twice the current font size. Okay. Use cases when you want scalability and accessible designs for nested elements where scaling proportionally is important. All right. So like let's say you've got some section in your page where you've got it all set and you have parts of it being bigger text and other being smaller text, and you've got a very very aesthetically pleasing little design there on some section, and you want it like that. Well, if you're using pixel, maybe if you used pixels or something on some of that, then when some of the other stuff changes size, the pixel's still going to stay the same, so it's not. And that's an advantage of using EM is even once you had something locked, I really like how this looks. When it grows, it's still going to look really well as, or shrinks, it's going to stay proportionate, look nice, right? So when you want scalable and accessible designs for nested elements where scaling proportionally is important, that's what we just said, for setting margin, padding, and spacing relative to the font size. Best practice, be cautious with deeply nested elements since EM values compound. For example, So a child, a parent, child, a child of a child of a child. Yeah, okay. So if you're doing 1 EM, that's 1 EM of the parent. So if you've got that nested, it's going to get smaller and smaller as you drill down, right, so to speak. Hope that makes sense. When to use each unit. Pixel for borders, small icons, and fixed layouts where precision is critical. Not user scalable, avoid for text. Point, print specific styles, printed documents or reports, rarely used for on-screen design. EM font sizes, spacing, and layout that needs to scale proportionally. Scales with the user settings. Okay. And also there's this idea of REM. So REM is, it's the same, the only difference between EM and REM is relative to the root element's font size, not the parent. Okay. EM is relevant to is in relation to the parent, where REM is relative to the root font size, right? And when I say root font size, it's basically like here I've got HTML, I have this font size being 16 pixels, right? So this would be the root element, okay? That would be the root. Let's see. Combine units thoughtfully. Use PX for precise. Yeah, okay. Non-scaling elements. Test for responsiveness. Check your design scales across different screen sizes and resolutions. Root font size. Set the HTML root font size using pixels. That's interesting. Set the root size. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's what I did too, didn't I? Okay, and use REM relative to the root. Yeah. Or EM elsewhere to maintain consistency and scalability. Okay. So I think I've discussed that enough. So in here also, so I wanted to kind of also show you. And here's let me save this site too. This is the W3 org. This is more of a standard type, standards type site, not the W3 schools one. And I'm going to save that URL as well. Okay. So here, sorry, kind of going back here. It's font families. This is kind of nice to show you the different font families and stuff like that. So here's font family, and this is what it's going to look like. Okay. Your browser, sample image. Okay. So here you got a little different design. So I'll send you that as well. What I really came over here to do is show you. So like, you got the EM. So if you set your default font size to 16 pixels, right? And if you want something to be convert PX to EM. Oh, yeah. So it's just saying, so 16 pixel here, if I put 16 here and hit convert. So we know the 16 equals 1 EM, right? Well, if you want something to be 8 pixels, right? So that's going to be 0.5. And then also, so like here, let's see what happens here. Okay, no. So convert PX to EM. So any kind of, if you want 7 pixels, convert. There, if you got something that's hard, it's not always going to be a 1 or a 0.5 or whatever. So not that you'd probably use 7 for much of anything, but just to mention this. So 1 EM, 0.75 EM is 12 pixels. Okay. So it's a nice little converter, right? Let's save that as well. So get that. Okay. And we have I'm going to go look at those floating images. Look at that. All right. Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to go through a couple of these. Probably will stop the floating. So clear left. Okay. Yeah, so just remember, if you want to stop the floating before subsequent element floating, use clear left. Relational selectors. Yeah, we're going to have to look into that a little bit. All right. So let's wait on that. And let me show you some more code here. All right, let's see here. Embedded styles at the head, went through that. Measurements and text colors. Okay. Let me make this a little bigger. So here's absolute. Absolute for absolute units. Relative for relative. Let's look at our CSS, what we did there. So let's go down to our absolute is 12 points. That's absolute value, right? Fixed. Relative is 1.5 EM. That's relative, right? It's relative to, we know for EM is relative to the parent. Where REM, if we have REM, it's going to be relative. And probably most likely this will be the same. Let me see. Nope. Yeah, okay. It did change there, didn't it? Kind of did change there a little bit. Relative units. So that's relative to that one. And then we put that back to EM. Save it. It's much bigger. So Yeah, okay. So absolute, using points. Relative, using EMs, right? Different color names. We kind of already looked at colors a little bit. So I guess I didn't really create an example of this here, but that's okay. Um, and then here, the next thing we look at is the text shadow. So we have this text shadow. So here's text shadow, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, and there's the color, right? And so that's what this is. This is a class. It's a class that's defined. That's applied to this, right? And this image is floated to the left, so it wraps around it. This image is floated to the left. So yeah, let's look at that a little bit. Float left. Let's change this to right. So now it's on the right side. Float it it was on the left side, right? We'll just get rid of float altogether. And it's right down, it's going to be underneath it. It's not going to do anything there, right? So we're back to right. Float left. And just imagine this is kind of a combination one, right? So first you're going to look for image float, then image, right? So let's look at our HTML. So we're going to look for what? We're going to look, so this is our image, right? So we're looking for image float, right? Image float, dot image float, right? We're looking for dot image float. And then we don't have a dot here though, but this is the image. We're using the class and then we're using the element, the HTML element. So we're saying find this class, then find this image. So like I said, if I create another image on this page, if I create another image on the HTML page, it's not going to be relevant unless it's underneath, at least unless the parent has an image float class, okay, applied to it. Let's see here. All right, let's look at these a little bit. So a little dynamic action here. So you got first item, second item, third item, fourth item. I think the darker gray here, lighter gray here. So let's go look at the CSS. So we got a class, first item, second item, third item, fourth item. Let's go look at that. Is that down here below? Yeah. Advanced selectors. I might have done that a different way here. Bear with me here for a second. Yeah, I don't think I actually used those. First item, second item, third item. Basically what here is we've got UL, LI, advanced selectors. So basically this is what this is doing, UL dot advanced selector. So what this is do is, since it doesn't start with a dot, it doesn't start with a dot or, which would be a class. It doesn't, so this is actually an HTML element. So go find this HTML element and then find the one that matches the class, right? So here's the advanced selectors, right? It's going to match that one, right? It's going to go that, it's going to it's going to loop through here for all the ULs and find the one that has an advanced selector. Okay, and then once it does that, then what it's doing from there, it's saying, so for all of the list items, okay, that's underneath that, right, add padding, border, margin, top, and bottom, right? You're adding a little bit of padding, a little margin, and a little, a border and a little margin. And then what you're doing here is you can do the first child. First child is, okay. But then after that, you can't do like second child, third child. You have to do it like this. This would be the second child's nth child, and 2 would be the second one, right? And then this nth child is odd. I'm just showing kind of different ways to do that in a way. So that's probably a little bit confusing. So I probably should clear that up a little bit. Hover. So hovers over all of the LIs, hover. That's why you see it look different when you hover, right? It's changing this background from hovering, right? So actually, let me change this one. I just want to make sure that this is working like I think it's working, just for the heck of it. Okay, yeah. Okay, so what this is basically doing is the first child, it's setting to this. The second child, it's setting to this, right? The third child is actually white. It doesn't even have it doesn't have any style as far as color applied to it, because it doesn't fall in here, right? The first one is this first one. The reason that it's now purple is because it's going the odd one. So it's going to be the first one and the third one, right? So if I just kind of get rid of this and save that. So then this is not using that, and it's just doing the first child. It's using this color, kind of a lighter gray. I'm sorry when I hover over it. The first item's lighter gray, and then the second item's a little darker gray. That's using this and this one. This is taking the first child, and this is the second child. Okay. Now, obviously, you put a 3 here. Right? Let's put a 3 there, and we save that, and we'll go down and look at that. It's going to be the third one now. Right. We do a 4 here and save that. That'll be the fourth one. Okay. And then instead of, let's go back up. So one will in this case, one's actually overriding the other one. So you could actually do something where you odd and even, right? You could do odd and even. So the odd is one and the even's the other, right? Just an example of different ways to do it, right? All right. What else did I want to kind of cover here? So we were looking at those more advanced selectors. Let me see what this looks like, this page here. I think I'm going to have to change this. Let's open that live server, see what that looks like. Okay, yeah. So just some selector examples, a child paragraph inside a div. Okay, so here let's go look at the CSS. Header, main, descendant selectors, parent P. So here, this first one right here, this is saying descendant. Here we'll have to look at the HTML a little bit to make sure we understand what we got here. But obviously, this is start with a dot, so these are classes, right? Descendant, and this P, right? That's going to be an HTML element. So it's just going to say, go find class of descendant, then go find parent, then go find the P, right? So you're drilling down, right? So here's descendant, here's parent, all right? So first you find descendant, then parent, and then here's the P, right? And this is the child paragraph, okay? I wonder why I would have had a child and a parent like that, but that's okay. That's okay. Like, okay, descendant, child selectors. I'm just basically saying this is a child selector, I guess. Okay. Child selector dot parent and then P. Okay, let's look at that. Okay. Yeah, so like let's change that to, let's just change that to this for a second. So I'll make sure this works like I think it does. So that change, all three of those are green. Okay. Yeah. So the first one, right? The first two, it's going to style those first two, right? It's going to style those first two, right? Based on this, right? But it's not going to style this one. But if you do that, it's going to style all three of them. That's just something you have to play with and kind of get used to using. So here's a sibling selector. So these are, let's see, we got a sibling, first, second. I don't know if we have to go through all of these. I don't think that for this, I don't think for this, for the assignments, it's going to get into anything that's going to be this in depth. There's going to be some, but it won't be that in depth. So here, let's just go ahead and take a quick look here. So descendant, it's basically saying, main tag for the L, for every LI under the main tag, you're going to have a font size of 90%. Here's saying for every A tag, for every ULA tag, you have a color of green. And this is called adjacent sibling. Adjacent, H2 plus P, right? So adjacent, a child, then a general sibling. I'll have to show some examples of. I'll show you some other examples of that to make things a little less confusing on that. Later. Yeah, later. Combination of selectors. Yeah. So another thing you can do multiple selectors in one line, H1, H2, H3, color blue. So you can have multiple selectors all in one line. That's helpful. And then obviously here it's saying unordered list. So every unordered list, every unordered list that has a class of speakers, right? It's going to do that, right? For every unordered list of speakers. Obviously, whenever you have that dot, you're talking class. When you don't have a dot in front of there, you're talking about the HTML element. All elements with href attributes. Okay. Font size 95%. So this is like all A tags. All A tags. You can do font family. Arial, sans serif. So you're changing the font family for every A tag, every href A tag, elements with href tags, right? Um, all input elements with type attributes that have a value of submit. Okay, so we haven't really got into those, and I'm surprised we're mentioning it so early in this book on that. But yeah, common CSS pseudocode classes. So a pseudocode class is like they're special type. They're special type in that they provide some function, like when you hover over something. So that one where we had to hover, that was a pseudo class, right? So when you hover over that, you change the style. When there's focus on something, right? That's another pseudo class. When you have a link, and then have you ever noticed also, like when you've got a page where you've clicked a link, and when you kind of come back again, that link's a different color than what it was because it's already been visited, right? So that's how that's done by changing visit it. You can have that being a different color than something that's an active link. That'd be, well, here's an active link, right? This is a link. Here's visit it. Here's active. Here's hover. Here's focus. And then we already looked at first child, right? First child. You're gonna have first child, last child, only child, right? And then here's some common pseudo elements. Okay, I don't know what this is really going to tell me. Yeah, so here's an A link. Use the colon, right? For pseudo element. Link, color green. So for the link, it's going to be green. If you hover or focus on, you put focus on that link, it's going to change the color here, right? Here it's just saying go find the main tag, then go find the P tag under all P tags under the main tag, then get the first child of that P tag and set the font weight on that to bold. And then main, so same thing here, first child, and then here you're getting the first letter, and then font size 1. So here you're just getting the first letter. And that's the first child of the P tag, right? So let's look at what they had here. P tag, first child. Okay. So what was it doing here? Let's just make sure this is right. Bold. So we want the main P first child. Main P first child. So main P first child bold. That's kind of hard to tell from that. All right, accessibility guidance for hover. So hover and focus, apply the same formatting to the hover and focus pseudo classes for an element. That way, those who can't use the mouse will have the same experience as those who can. If more than one style rule at a cascade level is applied to an element, use the style rule with the highest specificity. How to determine the specificity of a selector. An ID is the most specific. This is important. Especially, I believe there's going to be a test related question on this. So, how to determine the specificity? ID is the most specific. A class, attribute selector, or pseudo class selector is less specific. An element or pseudo element selector is least specific. Okay. Because basically what you're saying here is there's more elements on a page. An ID is a specific ID, right? So it's going to be very, the specificity is going to be the most specific in ID. An element, you can have multiple div elements, multiple P elements, right? That's going to be more less specific, right? A class, because you could have multiple multiple classes on the same page that have the same name, right? Because you, for styling purposes, right? Attribute selector or pseudo class selector is less specific. Okay. All right. The cascade order for applying style sheets. Important rules is the user style sheet, then dash important in a web page, normal rules in a web page, normal rules in a user style sheet, and then default rules in the web browser. How to identify a rule as important. This is how you state that something's important. Okay. I'm not going to go through too much more of this. You can create a custom property. Does this talk about custom property here? Yeah. So to create and use a custom property, the syntax, the selector, and then the custom property, the name of it and the value, right? The syntax of the custom property, property var. Okay. Let's see. So here's an example. So for H1, you do color and you can do this variable. And so you can have all these variables defined at your root level, right? Instead of, so, some benefits maybe to this, you can have at the very top of your, your document, your style sheet, you can have a whole bunch of different color type things that's used in multiple places. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. I don't have a example here on this one, but let's just say you can define colors. You can define multiple custom colors, right? And then instead of every time you see every place you're using a color here, if you've already got a color scheme that you're using, if you already got a color scheme you're using, you can use those values right here. So if you're using it in multiple places, then you can just change that custom property up top, and all of these other ones are going to change, right? Big benefit as opposed to doing this. This is a little more of a maintenance nightmare when you create especially when you create something significant amount of styles for something significant. You have all these all over the place. And usually sites have a color scheme, so you're better off using those kind of custom colors, properties, so that you can set your scheme, your color scheme, and then you just use those throughout. So then if you want to change your scheme, you just update those properties, and then you don't have to update every single thing here, right? Yeah, that's a real nice feature. All right. So that's all I'm going to really talk about on that here. See if there's anything else I really wanted to look at here. No. All right. So let's go through this homework assignment. And, we can make sure that here we've got color RGB. Okay, at least doing all that. So let's just do color home. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what we want to do here on this. All right. So let's go through this homework assignment here. So just in general for the homework assignments, for Chapter 4, we've got a written test, Chapter 4 written test, we've got this homework assignment, and we've got a lab. So I'll provide I need to take a look at the written, the kind of the study guide I created. It still needs a little work. So, and like I said, those study guides are not going to answer every single question, but hopefully they'll help you with some of those questions, some of those written questions. So then besides that, you're just going to have to do a little bit of research. Obviously you've got the book, the book's a resource, you got the internet, you can, obviously use like W3 schools, whatever, and go from there on that. So then you've got the written test, you've got the homework assignment, and this one, it's going to be pretty straightforward here. It won't be as bad. This lab here, I kind of looked at this and, actually, I started editing this a little bit because, it's kind of confusing. You've got you're creating a lot of HTML, and I'm trying to group some things together if you just create one document with a few different things. So I'm going to edit this a little bit, and then I'll create a video and go through this a little bit because there's quite a bit in here. So I'll go through that. But this one here, we can go through this one right now. So I'll send you the link a little bit later today. I'll send you an update because usually I try to send an update after the lectures are finished. So I'll send you an update on this. Actually, probably be a little later than today because I'm probably going to want to do. I'd rather get everything kind of in place before I send you an update. So it might be like tomorrow sometime. But you can search for this, downloading this. So you download the normal.css file, or actually when I just put it in here, that'd be the easiest thing to do, right? But I'll go ahead and add that to this. So download the normal CSS file, and then you can save it. Right-click, save to your machine, right? So let's just take another look at that. It's right here, right? And let me copy this, and then you basically click download. Then it's here, and then you can right-click in here, and then save as. You can save it as a file, okay? You can save it, specifically in your directory structure, or from your downloads folder and copy it over, whatever. But you need to make sure you get it within your directory structure, your Chapter 4 directory structure, so you can use it, right? So you're going to refer to it. All right. So that's that. And then so you're going to link to your custom CSS after linking to the. Yeah, so in your file, like what we did before, and we already did that already. So in your file, what I had, which one was it? So in this one here, we had our two style sheets. We had our normalized one. Make sure you have that one first, right? You don't want to have that one second. You want to have that one first. Because if you have it second, then it's going to overwrite. It's going to normalize everything that you've already put in there through your custom one. So you always do the normalized one first, then your custom one. Okay. So create a web page about your favorite hobby and use an external style sheet to implement the following requirements anywhere on the page. Okay. So it's just saying anywhere on that page, so you're going to have to come up with a little bit of content for your favorite hobby, come up with some stuff, search for some stuff, make up some stuff, whatever. Okay. So you'll have enough content so you can kind of do all these different things, right? And then obviously an external style sheet. I kind of mentioned that. So for our purposes, it depends on what you want to do. I hope I got a lot of stuff here. But so here I've got my root directory chapter 4. If you want if you want to create a styles directory, it's kind of, probably a good habit to get into is have call it styles or CSS. And then under there, you can have your specific style sheets, your cascading style sheets. And then in the images, have an image directory, right? If you just want to have it all lumped together within the chapter 4 at the same level as HTML, that's fine. Just realize how you will have to access this. So like in my case, since I have a styles folder at the same level as my HTML, I have it like this. So obviously if you you just have everything at the HTML level, then you're going to have it like that, right? So we're going to use a relative measure, EM. We already discussed EM before, okay? EM or percent. Percent can be another one you can use. EM's probably, I would say, is preferred. There's some limitations with percent. It doesn't scale the same as EM. EM's kind of a better option than percent, but that's fine. EM or percent. So somewhere you want to use that EM for some text on there or whatever. You want to go ahead and use EM. Then use an absolute measurement, which will be either pixels or points, right? That's an absolute one. You want to use a hex color, right? And if you recall, for the hex colors, where's the picker? The hex colors look like this, right? The RGBs look like that. HSLs look like that. And let's see what it's asking you to do. There's an RBGA as well, right? That's just another parameter there. So you can research that a little bit, the RGBAs, okay? Use a descendant selector, right? So let's just see here. So here's some references too for selectors. And is it going to have a descendant selector in here for me? Probably not. We looked at one already, but simple selectors, combinations, descendant. Div P, right? So that'd be a descendant selector. This is under combinations there. Here's your pseudo classes, right? Pseudo elements. So this will help you with all those different things. Kind of, what we were kind of going over a little bit. Pseudo elements. First letter, first line, whatever. I don't think it's asking you to do all those, but those are all here available under the CS references, right? CSS reference here. So let me save that so I can send that to you as well. All right, so back to here. So just saying use multiple selectors. So just try out some different selectors on your page besides your descendant selector. There's other ones, right, as well. Use a child selector. Use a pseudo class selector to style your links with the same dot hover and focus. So you're gonna do a colon hover and a colon focus on some links that you'll have on your page, right? So you create some links maybe to whatever about your hobby, and then use the hover and focus. So if you hover and focus over it, maybe change colors or whatever, right? Use the shorthand font property to change all the following font family size, weight, and line height. And if you recall, let's take another look at that. We did that. I wonder if they have that. I don't know if that's in W3 schools. We did go over that though. Where are we at? Here, I probably should have gone up though. Oh no. So here, this is the This is kind of that shortcut to do that. And here's an example. I can send you that as well. I'll include that in an email as well. So that's the shorthand font property to change different things. You can change different things all within one line. Add a font shadow. All right, we did that. In here, font shadow by using text shadow on a specific line of text, right? Use inline and embedded CSS somewhere on the page to demonstrate the cascade of different style rules. So basically, if you kind of remember, we had that before we got rid of it. We had that inline. We had that inline. We had that inline style, right? We got rid of it. And that's why it's not red up here anymore. But go ahead and see how that works. Where you got an inline, right? That's your inline, and then you have your, and then you can do your embedded here, right? You can call this whatever, right? This is just whatever you decide to call your class, right? That really doesn't make sense. It's just for demonstration purposes. I don't know if you'd call something embed, but so basically in this case, right? This would be your one that you have defined up here, and then also your embedded one. You would go ahead and have it right here, right? Your style, you'd have a style tag right here, right? Style, right? And then just see how this one's going to take precedence over what you have defined up here, right? And then basically validate your page, validate your HTML and your CSS. Provide screenshots of that. So that's best to have your CSS obviously separated out. That way it'll help with the validation as well. So this shouldn't be too bad. I'm sure there's some areas that could be a little bit of small little challenge here, but it shouldn't be too bad. Okay. I think the lab is going to take a little more work. But tell you the truth, I think it's just more how everything's worded here. It's a little more confusing. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'm sure it won't be perfect when I'm done, but it didn't even have these. So, if you're going to do this and then you're styling one paragraph, you might as well use the same file to style another paragraph, or same file. But some of these you're going to have to create a new file, because if you're wanting to change the background color and stuff like that, and you're going to have to create a new file because there's some things specific to that file. So I'll clean that one up. So anybody have any questions about anything at this point? So that's all I have right now. And like I said, I'll go ahead and create a separate video for the HTML lab for Chapter 4 HTML lab. I'll do a separate video for that. And then I'll also send you references for different areas that, be helpful for you to complete the assignments. And also I'm going to include the study guides for Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 written test. So thanks. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day.